It is my absolute honor to welcome you to our first Brooklyn Talks conversation of the season, celebrating our special installation, Oliver Jeffers' Life at Sea. In Life at Sea, award-winning artist, best-selling author, and climate activist Oliver Jeffers invites visitors of all ages to a world below the ocean waves. Our program tonight begins with a reading by Jeffers from his children's book, The Life of Fausto, followed by a conversation between him and Mary Annaïse Heglar about the role of storytelling in our environmental justice movements. Afterwards, we hope you'll stick around and join us downstairs in the museum shop where you can get a copy or get another copy of Oliver and Mary's books, and they'll be available too to sign them. I'll take a moment now to introduce each of our speakers. Oliver Jeffers makes art and tells stories, fine art for mostly adults and picture books for mostly children. As a visual artist and author working in painting, bookmaking, illustration, collage, performance, and sculpture, curiosity and humor are underlining themes throughout his practice as both an artist and a storyteller. Mary Annaïse Heglar is the author of Troubled Waters and The World is Ours to Cherish, the latter of which we have available tonight if you would like to get a copy. She is also known for her essays that dissect and interrogate the climate crisis, drawing heavily on her personal experiences as a Black woman with deep roots in the South. Her work has been featured in collections like All We Can Save, The World as We Knew It, The Black Agenda, Letters to the Earth, and Not Too Late. With investigative journalist Amy Westervelt, she co-created the Hot Take podcast, a newsletter which retired in 2022. In 2024, they together launched Spill, which fosters messy conversations about the climate crisis. Heglar has taught at Columbia University in New York and Tulane University in New Orleans. In 2020, she received a SEAL Environmental Journalism Award, and she's based in Birmingham, Alabama. We're incredibly grateful that she made the trip to be with us in Brooklyn today. Without further ado, please help me in giving a warm Brooklyn welcome to Oliver Jeffers and Mary Annaïse Heglar.
Hello, everyone. I believe you were promised a story. So we're going to try and show the slides for this at the same time. And whenever I was asked to come and give a talk or be in conversation with Mary tonight, and that I do have a new book coming out tomorrow, and it's called I'm Very Busy, which is sort of apt. But I felt that's not the book that I would read at the Brooklyn Museum when we're discussing the health of the ocean, the state of the world, and especially the exhibition Life at Sea. So this is a book that I made, a couple of years ago, called The Fate of Fausto. Has anybody here read this before? Has anybody here not read this? People ask me which is my favorite book that I've ever made, and it's this one. And I don't quite know why, but okay. There was once a man who believed he owned everything. And set out to survey what was his. You are mine, said Fausto to the flower. Yes, said the flower, I am yours. Content, Fausto walked on. You are mine, he said to the sheep. Yes, said the sheep, I suppose I am. Feeling satisfied, Fausto walked on. Next, Fausto came upon a tree and declared, Tree, you are mine. To which the tree replied, Oh, all right, I can be yours. And the tree bowed before the man. This pleased Fausto, and he walked on, happy to be owning a sheep and a flower and his tree. Before long, Fausto had claimed a field and a forest and a lake. At first, the lake had pretended not to hear, but Fausto showed that lake who was boss. When he reached a mountain, Fausto said in a clear voice, Mountain, you are mine. No, said the mountain, I am my own. And this angered Fausto, and he stamped his foot and he made a fist. Still, the mountain would not move. But Fausto put up such a fight you would not believe and showed the mountain who was boss. Eventually, The mountain bowed before Fausto and said, "Yes, you're in charge. I am yours." Feeling very important, Fausto easily conquered a boat to set off to sea. For a mountain, a lake, a forest, a field, a tree, a sheep, and a flower were not enough for him. When he had gotten far enough from shore, Fausto said in a loud voice, "Sea, you are mine." But the sea was silent. "You belong to me, sea. I know you can hear me," said Fausto louder still. And then after a while, the sea said quietly, "You do not own me." "You are wrong, I do," replied Fausto, unsure which way to look, for the voice appeared to come from everywhere. "But you do not even love me," said the sea. "You are wrong again," said the man. "I love you very much." But Fausto was lying, and the sea knew it. "How can you love me when you do not understand me?" the sea asked Fausto. "You are wrong a third time," said Fausto. "I understand you deeply." And then added, feeling impatient, "Now admit you are mine, or I will show you who is boss." "And how will you do that?" asked the sea. "I will stamp my foot and make a fist." "If you wish to stamp your foot, then come show me how it is done, so I understand." And in order to show his anger and importance, Fausto climbed overboard to stamp his foot on the sea. But he did not understand. And he did not know how to swim. The sea was sad for him, but carried on being the sea. The mountain too went back to its business. And the lake and the forest, the field and the tree, the sheep and the flower carried on as before. For the fate of Fausto did not matter to them.
Thank you. Thoughts and prayers to Fausto. Thank you, so many people for coming out tonight. It's wonderful to see Brooklyn tonight. I lived in New York for a while, and I know that Brooklyn likes it when you acknowledge them.
Yeah.
So
Hi, Brooklyn.
Yes, hi, Brooklyn. And thank you, Oliver, for being here. So let's get into it, because I came with questions. So you are an artist in several different realms. You both wrote and illustrated the book that you just read to us. How did you first find out that you were an artist?
How did I first find out I was an artist? I do get asked this question a lot, and I think that it depends on whether it's a kid asking me or an adult asking me. But if it's
Imagine me as both.
If it's an adult asking me, I said, "Well, when did you stop?" Because all kids make art. All children are born artists. The trick is remembering how to remain one as you grow up. We all have innate curiosity. And I think so much of the way of the world, and especially in Western education, we are taught how to pass an exam rather than how to be a contributing member of society. My dad was a teacher, and so we would often have, I guess, lectures in the early part of our life, but conversations afterwards, and he always said that, it doesn't feel right, a lot of the way in which we go about things. Like the two most difficult things any human being learns how to do is how to walk and how to talk. On a day one of school, you're pretty much told to sit down and shut up. And he also said that whenever you encounter somebody who knows a lot of facts, that doesn't prove intelligence. That just proves you've got a good memory. Yeah. The surest sign of intelligence in another human being is the presence of curiosity and imagination. And so that he has always said that there's only one thing that we need to teach people, which is how to remain curious. So when did I become an artist? I guess since I was 2 or 3 and picked up a crayon, and I just kept going. But the other part of the answer is, like, when did I realize it was a viable career? was when I was about 15, and so I grew up in Northern Ireland. I moved to Brooklyn, New York in like 2007, and I still have my studio here, but I'm partly based between here and Northern Ireland. And for those of you who don't know, Northern Ireland is the top right-hand corner of the island of Ireland, which is under British rule. And I love doing this when I'm in England, especially. Like, who can tell me the difference between the British Isles, the United Kingdom, and Great Britain? And nobody can. And two of them are geographical terms, and one of them is a political term. And the Great Britain is the big island. The British Isles is both islands. Although I did say this in Dublin once, and they were like, "That's not what we call them." And I was like, well, actually, what do you call them? And they said, "These islands." And then I asked, well, what if you're somewhere else? And they said, "Those islands." But then and we were talking about this a little bit before about Brexit, and whenever that vote happened, all people had to do was read their fucking passport, and it says the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And so we are under British rule there, and I guess I digress because it was a very politically violent place when I was growing up, very divisive, very much an us versus them mentality. And I went to a school that my parents wanted to put me into, which was one of the first integrated education schools in Northern Ireland. And I'm a patron of integrated education in Northern Ireland. And when I received a letter asking me to be a patron for integrated education in Northern Ireland, I had an intern at the time who was from Atlanta, Georgia, and she was a young African-American woman. She was like, "What do you mean integrated?"
Exactly my next question.
And it's actually how I learned how to make a lot of my work, because I then says, well, you've got two different groups of white Christians with slightly different origin stories who think it's a terrible idea that their children are educated together. And it was just like the ridiculousness of that. I was like, how can I convey that ridiculousness of such an unnecessary problem in a way that just shows it to the people who are implementing it?
So there was segregation, but it was just white folks?
Yes. Catholics and Protestants. But we were talking about this again a little bit earlier. Does anybody know about the Troubles in Northern Ireland? A little bit. It's like basically people killing each other on an island. We are the equivalent of like stick them on an island and let them fight it out. But it began as a human rights issue. And because Catholics were treated as second-class citizens in major ways, and we took note of the civil rights movement in the United States. And so that's why in 1969, what began as marches for basic human rights and civil rights were reacted to with such brutality by the British government that it began this whole thing. But so yes, that's what integrated education means. And the question was, how did I get into making art? I went to one of the first integrated schools, and really it wasn't a good idea to a lot of parents, so they had to take in all the kids from all the other schools who were getting expelled. So it was like the roughest of the rough. And anybody who showed any interest in actually being educated was sort of rewarded by the teachers, but you couldn't be seen to be doing that. But I realized that there was transactional value in art, because I could not be beaten up by the tough kids because I would draw on their skateboards or decorate their school bags. And so I realized, like, oh, this is societal worth. And I also realized, oh, I can get out of doing geography by doing the set for the school play. So it was this distraction for me, and it has this social worth. But it wasn't until I was 15 and there was the careers advisor came, and I learned that making art was an actual career option. And that's what I knew that I wanted to do from that moment forth.
And was there ever a moment where you kind of like struggled with it? Or?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, still, yes. It's like, if there's any artists in the room, it's not easy. It's like, it's the equivalent of hanging your soul over the washing line and letting the public beat it. And
yeah,
it's
pretty accurate.
You have to, I ended up lecturing in the art college a little bit after that, but it didn't go too well. I know enough good teachers to know that I'm not one. I think it was way too just harsh on people, because I could see that people were using this as an excuse. I was like, there's this idea of the American dream where if you want it badly enough, you deserve it. And that's just not true. And there's people who want something badly enough, but there's just no talent there. And that's a very bitter pill to swallow. And so those people who have decided to make their life as an artist are like, they've won twice because they've stopped caring what other people think, and they are just doing it because it's something that is a burning desire in them that they have to do anyway. So is there moments of self-doubt and do things not work out? Yes, all the time, But I think you learn to navigate around that by just trying to find a different way. And I do think, though, that it's whenever you show that as part of your process, it actually makes the art more interesting. And I've thought about this for a while, that I think art is one of the only industries where the more selfish you are, the more generous you are.
Oh, say more about that.
Because if you're making art that you think people want, you're like, what's the next big thing? You know, okay, what do you want to see a picture of? I'm going to do that for you. That's not interesting.
Yeah.
And that's, you're sort of pandering to flows of fashion. Whereas if you're just like, I'm going to very publicly go in this downward cycle and see what the hell happens, that's where people say, it's like, oh, I can resonate with that because I went through that.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I guess I went through a period where I kind of, I wanted to be a writer ever since I was a little girl, and then I got to college and I started reading the autobiographies of my favorite writers like Langston Hughes and James Baldwin, and I saw all these moments where they almost starved to death. And I was like, well, if they almost starved to death and they're that talented, I might actually starve. So I better come up with a backup plan real fast. So there was like a good couple of decades where it was like, I don't think that I don't know if I can do this, and I just wasn't even really trying.
But you're still doing it, though. And
right,
that's the difference.
Right, and what I think I realize now, looking back at it, is that I needed, like the way one of my friends would describe it is like I needed time for my instrument to mature. He was a musician, so that's what he would say. Like some people have voices that don't mature until they're in their 30s or in their 40s, and then all of a sudden they can't be unbooked. But in their 20s, it's just like a big struggle. And I think that's what was my struggle in my 20s and 30s, was like I needed time to actually have something to say. I needed to go live life. So that's what that took. Yeah.
You can't drink from an empty cup. That's an old Korean saying, I think.
Exactly, yeah. And there are lots of people who publish books when they're much younger and wish that they hadn't, wish they had taken the time to mature. So, but... I did, by the way, once for a week, see if I could survive on vitamin sandwiches, vitamin pills and between two pieces of bread because I had no money. And it didn't... Literally vitamin pills?
Yeah, just like, I was like, I've got this solved. Like, the bread will keep me from being hungry, and the vitamins is like, that's all my body needs. No, didn't.
Did you at least toast the bread?
No, didn't even think to do that. But anyway, moving on.
Okay. So, we've been talking about art in a very broad sense, but I also want to talk specifically about storytelling, which I think probably all art does tell a story. I think storytelling is this word that kind of gets thrown around a lot these days, and it can become devoid of meaning. It can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Like some people use it to mean messaging, some people use it to mean propagandizing, some people use it to mean lying. So I wanted to ask you, what does storytelling mean to you, and why is it a sacred craft?
I've given this some thought. I didn't know you were going to ask that, but I've given this some thought over the years because it's like I do think of myself as a storyteller rather than a writer. But growing up in Northern Ireland, we're surrounded by good story. There must be something in the water if you look at the per capita the Irish authors that have come out. But there's an art to the idea of it, the classic structures of beginning, a middle, and an end, and always give your audience what they want, just not the way they expect it. These sorts of things. But there's a poetry and a beauty to it. But I do think that stories are actually deeply more fundamental than that. And something I've been thinking for a while is that all people are is a collection of stories. There's the stories that they are told, so that's their ancestry, where they're from, where they belong. There's the stories that that are told about them, and that's their reputation, the sort of their placement in the world. And then there's the stories that they tell, and that is their projection of self on one part, but it's also the stories they tell themselves, and that I think is the most powerful story of all. Is like, who am I? Who is it for? What do I want? Where is my purpose and my drive? And I've thought that there's that, if you think that this is that all of us are, like we really are, just if there was collective amnesia tomorrow, what would change? The memory of what we're doing and where we come from, and that's all stories. So I've spoken a lot at climate conferences over the years and talked about the importance of art and the importance of story, and it's happened enough times where scientists have come up and said, like, how can I take what you do to make what I do look better or more digestible? And I was like, you're asking the wrong question there, because what you're looking really for is a pretty PDF. And it's, that art is not the icing on the cake. It's not even the cake, it's the table on which the cake sits. It's like the stories are the ground on which we stand. And if you can shift that ever so slightly, you can change your perspective on everything. And I do think that's what we are in now in this world of division. It's a world of conflicting stories that suit the teller, not whoever it's being told.
Yeah, that reminds me of one of my favorite James Baldwin quotes. If you know me, you know I can pull a James Baldwin quote out of thin air. But he says that you write in order to change the world. And if you can alter even by a millimeter the way that people see reality, then you can change it. And yeah, I think that's a big part of what it means to tell a good story. Like, it's not just a list of facts, it's also an evocation of emotion, and sort of a shifting of perspective. So
but it's also, and I think, you were saying that story that's being thrown around is like media and content and messaging, but it's also, why are you telling the story in the first place? There's not a lot of people do, I think, enough looking about that. Which is what is the momentum? What is your reason here? And I've been thinking about this an awful lot, and because when I moved back to Northern Ireland and I could see the state that we're still in, it's better than it's been, but it's like we are the victims of the stories that we've told ourselves there. I was like, I don't necessarily know who I am, but I know who I'm not, and that's good enough for me. And I think that's becoming a global sickness now, sadly.
A global sickness.
Yes. Yeah. This idea of my identity is defined on the existence of an enemy. Yeah, we definitely need to reframe that, right? We do.
Yeah.
We do, because if you ask, and I think this is happening when it's groups of people thinking about other groups of people, but you get any individual beside any other individual, it's like they would probably find that they would like each other. They have more in common than not, but it's become this abstract sort of, scaling up of groupthink.
Yeah. You think that's being motivated by an idea of scarcity?
I don't know if it is being motivated by an idea of scarcity. I think it's more, I think that's sort of the great black undercurrent of it, and it's possibly driving a lot of things, but I think where a lot of it is coming from is what we've been experiencing really for the last century, since the end of World War II, is the erosion of community in the Western world. And, that like people are sort of being pitted against their neighbors, like keeping up with the Joneses, the idea of like the nuclear family in the suburbs where it's, you're all important, but you're on your own. And in Ireland still, there is the village mentality, and because that old saying, it takes a village to raise a child. They say that because it's true, but yet you look at, especially, and I lived and raised children in Brooklyn, and it's a tough ask for young families, especially mothers who are expected to be ambitious and put together and be a parent with a partner who's trying to do the same things, and almost with no family around and almost with no support. And everybody's like, you got this, but you're on your own.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess I think of America or the United States as not really ever having a period where we weren't pitting neighbor against neighbor, because this is, where we had Jim Crow and slavery and lived amongst people who did those things. So, but yeah.
But that wasn't isolated to here. That was everywhere. The notion of slavery was everywhere, but where I think in America, particularly, where the sort of the erosion of community, it does come into the sudden wealth that this country found itself in after World War II, and that sort of sense of suburbia, and a geographical isolation as well, I think, from the rest of the world.
That's interesting. Well, I guess I'm thinking more of the Jim Crow of
Yeah.
it all.
Okay.
That is very like unique to America,
Yeah.
and folks, the Nazis studied that. They studied America to figure out what they were going to do. Same thing with South Africa. So we kind of, unfortunately, have a unique hold on that. So we've been sort of dancing around climate change a little bit. So let's go there. What was the moment for you when climate change broke your heart?
I don't know if there was a moment. It was just a slow realization that, and I don't even know if it was like a noticing the weather type thing. It was, as somebody who reads books and travels the world, it's like, oh, there's a lot of people on Earth, and there's a lot of people that need a lot of food, and there's a lot of food that is just industry scale, and how does this actually work? And then I think just sort of bringing it back to this, the notion of, actually, I'm going to read a poem at the back of this book that I got permission from the Kurt Vonnegut estate to read, because it's like, for me, I've said this in some talks, it's like, I don't think we have a climate problem. The climate is doing exactly what it should with the input it's receiving. What we have is a story problem, because we know the solutions, but we're just not doing anything about it. And why is that? So climate cannot be isolated from class issues, and it cannot be as isolated from equality issues. And I think it comes down to this. So this is a poem written by Kurt Vonnegut in 2005, and it's called Joe Heller. True story, word of honor. Joseph Heller, an important and funny writer, now dead, and I were at a party given by a billionaire on Shelter Island. I said, Joe, how does it make you feel to know that our host only yesterday may have made more money than your novel Catch-22 has earned in its entire history? And Joe said, I've got something he can never have. And I said, what on earth could that be, Joe? And Joe said, the knowledge that I've got enough. Not bad, rest in peace. I think that is the root of the issue. The climate is doing, the earth is, scientifically speaking, it's dealing with this the way that it would. So it's not like the planet is broken, it's like we're broken. Civilization is broken because we keep trying to get more and more and more for faster, better, newer, cheaper. But why? Because that's not actually what people want. People want surprisingly simple things. They want to feel like they've got a community. They want to feel like they're safe. They want to feel like they've got dignity, and they want to feel like they matter and have a purpose. Yeah. Those things should be easy to accomplish. And I think that is part of why the climate issue has been so abstracted, because it's been deliberately positioned as such a large thing that nobody could do anything about it.
Yeah, it's also a problem of power being concentrated in too few hands, and those hands all kind of looking alike.
Yeah.
Because it's really not that many people who have put us into this situation. Like when you look back over the course of history, it wasn't a lot of people. It was a lot of people who had access to a lot of power and a lot of guns and a lot of money. And yeah, that's how we wound up here. And
absolutely.
It's the same people now.
Yeah, the knowledge that I've got enough.
Yeah, exactly. So was there a moment when you first became aware of climate change?
Yes, I think when I first visited New York in, what year was it, 1997, and I was doing a walking tour of the Brooklyn Bridge, and they said that the reason the Brooklyn Bridge was made was most of the people who lived in Manhattan, what year was the Brooklyn Bridge made? 1897, something like that. But they basically said it was like all of the farmland that were feeding the people in Lower Manhattan were in Brooklyn, and in winter they got cut off from the farmlands because the river froze, so they built the bridge. And since the bridge was built, it's never frozen over. I was like, wow.
Yeah. So 1997.
That happened, yeah.
Yeah. That's a wild. Like you're an OG in the climate world in that way.
I'm older than I look. Yeah. But it was like, sort of trying to take it, and it was like, the idea of just constantly taking and not giving and being able to say anything without consequence was like, there are consequences, and when you take without giving, it's like it leaves a hole eventually. And it's sort of this it was more of an abstract realization. It was like, how do we collectively not see the damage we're individually doing? But then, once I had kids, it was like, okay, I got to figure out how to speak to them about this. And then sort of realizing it was like the number that's been done on humanity by oil companies, by very powerful executives that are like, you know what, we're going to make this your fault. Carbon footprint, there you go. Like, you didn't recycle.
Yeah, brilliant branding right there,
It
right?
was a brilliant ad campaign.
Yeah.
And I've had the great fortune of doing some work with Christiana Figueres, who was the UN ambassador for climate in 2016 when the Paris Climate Accord was pushed through. She pushed it through. And I asked her, I was like, can I ask you a question? Is carbon footprint like a big red herring? And she said, yes. And she's like, is recycling a big red herring? And she said, yes. I was like, well, what do you do then? She's like, buy local, buy in season.
But it's also, I think part of the problem with the way that we frame climate change is that we framed ourselves as consumers and not as citizens. So it's always about what you use and how you dispose of what you use, and not what you do with your voice, not what you do with your vote, not what you do with, the way that they have framed this narrative. Of course, it was framed by companies. The oil companies were the first people to start even talking about climate change. Also, the first people to know about it. Like, them people have known about climate change since the 1960s. So for them to turn around and be like, what's your carbon footprint, is like, I think you need to be asking yourself that question.
Yes.
Which I have tweeted at BP. And
good for you.
They did not enjoy that.
Good for you. But, that's not to say that we're completely helpless, because in this system where if you ask any politician in Britain, in America, what's your primary objective as a politician, they would probably say to get reelected.
Yeah.
And so therefore the voter has power. And if you ask any CEO of a company, it's the customer's always right. So yes, if there is mass movements from the grassroots up, it can work. But it's hard, because the system's set up against you to do the right thing, to buy the right thing. And I suppose in a way that I've been speaking to my kids about, it was like, just try to think about what you're buying and what will you do with it, and can you return it to the earth as food or as poison?
Yeah. I think there was an interesting moment in climate communications where it was right around 2018 when that big scary IPCC report came out saying just how dangerous 1.5 degrees were. And the initial response by people who are used to communicating about climate change was like, donate to us, buy this thing, not that thing, recycle this way, not that way. And people were like, no, girl, we are way past that. And so we had to start talking about it in a different kind of way and go beyond the consumerism of it all. And then the pendulum swung so far to the other side where it was like, well, if these, I forget what the quote was, but it was like a very small handful of companies were responsible for most of the emissions on Earth. And so people were like, well, if they're all responsible for all the emissions, then I don't have to do anything. What I do and what I use doesn't mean anything. It's like, okay, well, now we've gone too far over here. So it's a difficult balance to strike, I feel.
It's a very difficult balance because it's, most people just want to live a good life with good food for their family and enjoy nice things. And, there's nothing unreasonable about that, but it's set up like, one of the worst offenders of carbon emissions is the fashion industry. And it's the carousel, it's the conveyor belt of every season and doing more. But it's, changing how you buy and what you buy is what average people can do, but there has to be a bigger fundamental shift to something much deeper, which is that, we do have this mindset that the world belongs to us. Whereas in reality, it's the other way around. And we just have to remember that. But how do we go about resetting all of that? That's the question.
Yeah. But just for clarity's sake, it does matter what you use and what you consume. It does matter how you vote, how you use your voice. It all matters. Everything's everywhere all at once.
No, and I absolutely agree with that. But to think that it's like it's all your fault, I think that's an unfortunate set of circumstances being placed on average people. Yes, we can do better, and we should do better. And I think that's how it will work. But it won't work if we're doing all that and the oil industries are still
absolutely
doing what they're doing.
Absolutely. Like, I think that was part of the problem before, was that it was framed as though it's all on an individual's shoulders. And so that, I knew a lot of people who didn't want to get involved at all because they just felt so overwhelmed by it all. They felt so guilty. Like, people would meet me and find out I worked in climate change and be like, you're going to hate me because I ordered lunch today. And I was like, girl, I hate way worse people than you. Like, I don't hate you at all. But you mentioned a moment ago your kids, so I'm curious, how has your concern about climate change changed over the years? In particular, has it changed by parenthood?
Well, yes, it has, and a big part of it has been how do I talk to my kids about it, but also in a way, before I had kids, I had opinions and thoughts on matters of social justice and the state of the world, but I was like, it's not my place to say them. And then when they showed up, I was like, well, wait a minute, who else is saying this? And I want to be able to look them in the eye and when they're adults and say, I try to do the right thing, say the right thing at the right time. And I think that has helped a lot. But then, you know, it's some of the concerns that I do have is like, what's the world going to look like in 50 years? You know, my older brother said that his son is, 17 now, and he said about 5 years ago, it was like, the job that he will do doesn't exist yet. And everything is changing, everything is subtly shifting, and I took that as a positive thing. It was like, we are adapting to this. That's what humans have always done, is that we've adapted. And I think, especially with younger people who are sort of still fresh and righteous and haven't been completely dissuaded by just, you know, the power of the advertising industry, that they can make a difference. Like, it's actually it is starting to come into it, you know, like the university degrees that you can do now. So much of it is about a better future in a way that didn't exist 20 years ago, that we'd never even thought of it, you know? And so for all of the bad news that we're hearing, there's rumbles and movements of good things that are happening. And I think it's important to remember those too, because for almost every problem, there is a solution. We're just not rallying around the same ones.
I tell you, I don't remember last time I saw a good headline. It's been a
Well,
little
actually,
while now.
I just spotted a friend of mine in the audience, Stefan, and he's made up an entire exhibition about this. And I remember what you said, if I can. It was like, because bad news happens fast and good news happens slow, and it's less sellable. Is that pretty accurate? So that's why it's, you know, we are designed to react, and the news industry is designed to get eyeballs, or as my dad calls it, the speculation industry. He says it's not news. But, and outrage is one of the surest ways to get people's attention. Good news doesn't have that same impact because it's not immediate. But that doesn't mean it's not happening.
Perhaps. I guess I feel like we're not outraged nearly enough in
Yeah,
this
yes.
moment.
Yeah.
And I
But
kind
we're
of...
being outraged about, I guess, maybe not the right things.
Maybe not the right things, and maybe not. I feel a sense of numbness, especially when it comes to climate change.
Yeah.
A sort of idea of like,
And that's
well, what
it
do you
with,
do?
with, you know, with everything that's happening in Gaza and with everything that's happening in Ukraine. It was like climate just gets forgotten.
Exactly. And everything that's happening in Washington, D.C. I mean, there's things happening all over. There's Sudan, there's Congo, there's so many places. But one of the things I remain convinced of is that if the United States does not take a leadership role considering our outsized contribution to climate change, I don't know what happens to the rest of the world. And I hate that my country has that much influence, but it feels like the unfortunate truth. So yeah, I feel like the world is not outraged enough.
It might not be, but it needs to, I suppose, unite in its outrage and have that be pointed in a particular direction.
Yeah.
And it's confusion and distraction galore right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, so I was at the UN General Assembly last week and a lot of the climate talks, and there was this sense of exhaustion and confusion with all of the delegates, all of the various representatives who made it their life's work to try and address the climate change issue. And we're like, we're further behind than we feel like we've been in a long time. And it's like, how do you keep optimism up?
Yeah.
Because it feels like nobody's paying attention anymore.
Yeah. And the main headline that most people heard from that was Escalator Gate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So let's stick with the climate change and children part. Why do you think it's important, and actually, why do you think it's possible to talk to children about climate change? I know, for me, I've heard a lot of people just assume that this is something you can't talk to children about, that it'll scare them to death. And what I've realized as I went deeper with those conversations, usually people were talking about themselves.
Yeah.
They were scared to talk about it, and they had not had that conversation with their own inner child.
Yeah.
So I wonder for you.
No,
what was
I agree with
process
that.
like?
It's like the Fate of Fausto that I read there. Kids get it. But I got a lot of emails at the time going, what am I supposed to tell my kid happened to him at the end?
Do you respond?
Yeah, you tell him he died. It happens. But there was another book that I made that was actually really dealing with grief called The Heart in the Bottle. And parents had a really hard time with that. Adults had a really hard time with that book. They found it emotionally destroying. But kids got it in a way that I think adults had not given themselves permission to do so. And so, you know, when we say, it's like, how do you talk to children about this? It's like, a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that children aren't as intelligent as they actually are, and see things that we don't, you know, they're still with their curious sense of mind, still with time, still with play. It's like, yes, they absolutely get it and need to get it, because it's, you know, what I don't like is this idea that it's, oh, we're handing the mantle to you, this is your problem now. It's like, that's a you know, a very irresponsible way for our generation to think about it. But at the same time, it's like, you know, there's that old Native American saying, it's like, you don't what is it, you borrow the earth from your children.
Yeah.
And so they need to know the world that they're going to grow up in. And I've thought about this. It was like, and what my dad used to say about education, it was like, you're teaching future contributing members of society how to do that. And that starts now. And that starts with, like, you know, actually we could all do with a bit more of what we teach children. It's like, share. Don't fight.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that people don't give children nearly enough credit as well, and I also kind of assume that they know how much the world has changed.
Actually, it does depend on the child, though.
It does.
At least adults have the decency to stare through you if they're bored, whereas children don't do that.
No, they will definitely let you know when they're bored. But, well, I was thinking more of like, they don't know another planet. So explaining to them how much this planet has changed, like if I'm 3, I don't know what the world was like in the 1990s. This is the only planet I know. And therefore, they're not nearly as afraid of it as I found that their parents were.
So, yeah, because I guess the way I'm going into it is it's not necessarily fear-based, but it's like, here's how you should do it. Yeah. So, you know, we live in Northern Ireland, and it's actually easy to sort of explain sustainability there, because you're like, oh yeah, that's the farm where this came from. This is where this comes from. Like, you know, you need to bring your recycling to here, and you need to see where it goes, because it's sort of a much smaller, like, microcosm of society. It's kind of easy to see, and I wonder if in some of the bigger places it becomes abstract. People sort of don't realize where their food comes from or where their waste goes. But it's a way into it. I think maybe is like, here's what could happen. It could be like, here's how we should be.
Yeah, I guess, so in my children's book, I made it a point to talk about increasing disasters, like having more fires and more storms and more floods and things like that. And I was able to explain that to, like, the kids I didn't really have to explain it to as much, but the adults I had to explain it to in the sense of, you know, natural disasters are not new. I grew up in a place where there were tornadoes a lot, and people talked to me about those tornadoes. And they told me what to do, to go into a hallway, to protect your neck, to, like, stay away from windows when there's a tornado. And so if I could internalize that as a 3-year-old, then I think children today can internalize this. Like, they can handle scary things. You just have to give them credit. Yeah. You have to tell them that they're not alone, and you have to tell them that they're safe, or how to be safe, rather. So I remember once I was at my friend's office, and her son was, he's like 7 years old. He was in another room watching a video on YouTube, and it was about how to prepare for hurricanes. We were in New Orleans, and I was like, wait, that doesn't scare him? And she was like, no, it actually makes him feel safer, because now he can understand the storm. He helps me like plan evacuation routes. He knows what to pack. Like, just including them in that process can make them actually feel a lot less scared.
Yeah.
So.
I see that. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I suppose I've never grown up somewhere where there's hurricanes necessarily. The rain just comes down sideways sometimes in Ireland. But we do notice the weather shifting there. But where you were talking about there with sort of the giving kids these drills is like where my mind kind of went was like the other kind of drills that are given in schools here, where I never thought it would be safer for me to bring my children up in Northern Ireland than in anywhere in New York with active shooters drills and it just that and I wonder how you apply that logic of just, this is a problem and it can't be dealt with, let's just get on with it, to the climate crisis, which is like, it can't be dealt with, so we get by.
Yeah.
I was like, that's not good enough.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not. Yeah. So one of the things that I love the most about working with children, reading with children, is how much that they teach you. I know that I've learned a lot about myself by working with children. So I'm wondering what has working with children taught you, or what has even having children taught you about yourself, about the world?
Having children has taught me, it was like how many questions they have.
Yeah.
I now know, as somebody pointed out once, was like, I now understand why Yoda just died in The Empire Strikes Back. Because Luke Skywalker just kept asking questions. But it's, I think I've learned to and it's a great trick. It's sort of a great thing to do sometimes. Like, how does this make sense to you? What way do you actually see the world? What's worth talking about? What's not? But also just remembering joy. Like remembering the importance of playing rather than working, and the idea that ambition and being a parent don't necessarily go hand in hand, but it's like, one thing is actually more important than the other. And so I've learned to slow down since having kids. I've also learned how to play both football and Tickle Monsters simultaneously.
Okay, multitasking.
Yeah, because but it has been, it's been that the matter of like, I almost, 2 years ago, I remember, it's like, hey, I do remember what my life was like before kids. And now it's gone. It's like, I can't remember what were my weekends. I don't really know. But there is this sort of calm, curious, just joy that you forget as an adult that is just there. It's like, oh yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
This is great. This is what being alive should feel like.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very important thing to remember.
Yeah, kids can be really powerful teachers. I'll say for myself, the thing that, the most important thing I think I've learned from children is how to talk to my own inner child. And so in a very powerful way, they've taught me how to heal. So I'll forever be grateful for that.
See, I think I am still a child. So there's no inner child. It's just I am.
It's just
a
all
child.
you?
Yeah.
Oh no, I got an inner child, inner teenager, any 20-something.
Yeah.
So we're coming to the end of our time, so I'll ask the last question.
Okay.
What is the role of the artist today?
Oh, the canary in the coal mine.
It's starting to feel like it's more canary than coal mine at this point.
It is.
Yeah.
It's the artist's job, I think, is to reflect society back to itself, but it's also to remind us that there's beauty and there's joy and there's hope. And it's, art is, and it's a very, very important time to be an artist, and it is, you're starting to see it where voices are being quieted, and it's like the classic playbook of authoritarianism, but the idea of satire, the idea of comedy as political observation, the idea of art as intellectual hope, are how society, I think, adjusts itself. And science is how we do things, but art is why we do them in the first place.
Yeah. I'll take a moment to add my answer, which is that our job is to tell the truth and shame the devil, which I think we're saying the same thing in different ways.
Yeah.
So,
Mine had a canary in it, though.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you
Okay.
so much, Oliver. This was
Yeah.
a wonderful conversation. Thank you all for coming out.